patches and showers early Friday, but improving to greater than 6 miles on Friday morning.
Hey, happy Friday. Sid again here. It is Friday, January 21st. I hope everybody had a good week. We did get some rather interesting weather here at the end of the weekend and first part of the week, and kind of left us a hot mess for a little bit, but we've gotten pretty much past that, thank goodness, and we're all kind of thawed out now and pretty much more or less back to normal, thank goodness. Hope everybody else is doing good out there too. Today, what I'm going to talk about is a little ghost ship story, and there's 3 different ship names attributed to a very similar story. One is the Octavius, another one is called the Jenny, and another one is called the Glorianna. Octavius, and let's see, is the Octavius and Glorianna are very, very similar in their telling. There's some slight differences, and then the Jenny, there's more noticeable differences in that as far as the location and the timing and stuff like that. But it's, you know, it's kind of one of those things where people can't really definitively attribute the stories to something, to actual definite things that happened. But you can find the references in whether it's books or magazines or things like that. But it's still it's interesting to hear about. Not necessarily entirely in a good way. Definitely makes me thankful that, well, number one, we live in this day and age where we have more modern conveniences, and makes me really thankful that I did not choose to go into a job that involved maritime work and travel, and especially in very, very difficult regions, very hard to work in regions. Thank goodness. God bless the people that do it. I don't know if I could. So we'll start off talking about the Octavius. It was a legendary ghost ship from the 1700s, and again, nothing that I could find that actually proved that that this happened to it. But what they say is, the Octavius was a 3-mast schooner. It was found west of Greenland by the whaling ship Herald on October 11th, 1775. The crew of the Herald boarded the Octavius because when they came upon it, it was clear that it was what they would call a derelict ship. And the general definition of that would be by maritime law, that it's considered property abandoned on navigable waters which has no hope of being recovered and no expectation of it being returned to its owner. So the boat, the sails were tore up. I guess there was like green moss all over the deck of the boat. And I saw 2 different places. One said 5 men boarded the ship. Another place said 8 men boarded the ship. And they found the entire crew of 28 below deck, dead and completely frozen, and almost perfectly preserved, which is the really freaky part. I can't even imagine walking in on something like that, and especially as superstitious as people tend to be that are in these type of trades. And, with people that are miners are very superstitious people also, which I can definitely understand because they're such dangerous jobs. And I could understand that the feeling that you would need to, have so many things going your way, and then so many things that just a little bit of a change, a little bit of a difference in something that could just turn everything on its head and could, threaten people's lives and stuff like that, Okay, so according to the legend, the captain's body was supposedly still at his table in his cabin All of the rest of the crew were like in their bunks, like they died while they were sleeping, like they're preserved, like they're just laying in their bed sleeping. But the captain, he's at his table in his cabin, pen still in his hand, like he's writing in the captain's log. And in the cabin with him was a woman, which I'm assuming was probably his wife, and a boy, which maybe might have been his son. And then there was also a sailor with a tinderbox. The only thing the boarding party left with was the captain's log, because basically they were so, again, being superstitious and being so, I'm sure they were just completely freaked out by what they were finding. I think they were afraid to probably leave with anything else besides that. And they were just unwilling to search the boat also. The last entry was from November 11th, 1762, which meant the ship had been lost in the Arctic in this story for 13 years. They've been floating around frozen solid for about 13 years. Anyway, maybe 12 years. But it had been in the Arctic for that long. Like everything else in the vessel, the logbook was frozen solid, and when they were going to leave, the part in the middle was just, I guess, like a frozen block of ice. And they ended up losing that on their way out. And so the only part they had was like a couple pages in the front, a couple pages in the back. So they were able to, from that, though, to piece together what happened at the end, at least. So they start piecing stuff together that the Octavius had left England for the Orient in 1761, made it to their destination the following year, 1762. The captain made a fateful choice, which turned out to be a really, really bad decision, that he thinks, well, we're going to take this route that is unproven, that we don't know anything about, that nobody really knows anything about, this passage called the Northwest Passage, which goes from between the Atlantic and the Pacific in Canada through the Arctic waterways in Canada. And we all know now, we're all pretty up to speed on what Canadian weather tends to be like, okay? And I think most people, when you have at least a general idea of Canada, Canadian weather, especially depending on what time of year you're talking about, we would probably, we would at least know that, we might want to, do things a particular way, just having a general idea of what their weather tends to be like. The captain's idea by taking this was, he thought that the weather was going to be warm enough and that there wouldn't be really any ice or anything like that to deal with, so they would be able to make a much quicker return trip back home. They're really wanting to get back home, so we'll take this route, and it's going to be quicker, we're going to make such a great time, and it's going to make them look great and him look great. Well, it didn't quite happen that way. They end up getting stuck in the ice. The ship that they're in, the ships, you have ships that are made that they can break ice. The hulls are like super reinforced and made a certain way, where they can, to different varying degrees, where they can break through ice. But this ship was not made to do that. So once they got up there and they got in that ice, they were stuck. There was nothing they could do. They were screwed, unfortunately. And I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine what that would have to feel like, sitting up there in the Arctic, stuck, and that's where you're dying. That would have to be absolutely horrible. The captain, unfortunately, makes this bad decision. They get stuck in the ice north of Alaska. They did eventually posthumously make it through the Northwest Passage when the Herald found them in near Greenland. The ship was never seen again after the encounter with the Herald. The last recorded position while the crew was still alive was 75 degrees north, 160 degrees west. And that's about 250 miles north of Utqiagvik. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that not quite right. I did look it up on the internet to get an idea of how to pronounce it, so I think I'm pretty close. It was renamed Point Barrow in 1825, though. And also, just as a interesting side note, for anybody that plays console games, the Octavius is featured in a naval mission in Assassin's Creed 3. For anybody that plays video games. And there are references to a very similar story about a ship called the Glorianna, told by the captain of a whaler that's called the Try Again, and his name was John Warrens. And the biggest difference being that the Northwest Passage wasn't mentioned, but the time frame was about the same. The Jenny was the third one mentioned, but this one's it's a little different as far as the where they were at and stuff like that, and the person that was reported to have found the ship. There was an article in a German magazine in 1862. An anonymous member of a whaling ship called Hope recounted a story that took place around Drake's Passage, south of Chile's Cape Horn. And at first they thought the ship was abandoned, but when they got closer, they could see men standing on deck. But they're just standing there. They're not moving. So they're like, okay, that's really weird. That's just unnatural. It's just with any boat, with anything. You're at work. You're going to be doing something. You're at least going to be moving. You're not going to just be standing there and not moving. But so anyway, it was really weird. But they get to the boat and they realize why they were just standing there and not moving was because they were, again, like with the Octavius, they were frozen solid. They froze solid standing on the deck of this boat. And that had to be just as bad as it was finding the people down on the Octavius in their bunks, frozen solid. I mean, you just got to, you think, okay, they laid down. They laid down long enough, they froze. They froze to death. How quick do you have to freeze standing on the deck? I don't know how long that takes. Somebody tell me down in the comments, how long does it take for you to freeze standing up? That's just kind of crazy. Okay, so the guys board the ship. They find the captain, also, of course, frozen solid. And he's with his logbook, like the other captain was. And the last date of entry was May 4th, 1823. And his last entry was, no food for 71 days. I'm the only one left alive. And so that was the Jenny. Okay, so like I said, I went through a few different things on the internet. Read a few things, read some stuff, watched some various videos and things. And everything's pretty much seems kind of inconclusive as far as, were these... To what extent were these factual stories that actually happened, or the kind of like when you play telephone when you're a little kid and things get told from one person to another person? Of course, this would have been a time where, obviously you don't have the radio, you don't have TV, you just, have people recounting stories verbally or maybe by letter. So I guess it would have to be a lot like, end up like a lot like the game telephone, where facts are going to be misremembered. They're, maybe somebody throws a few things in there to spice up the story to make it sound better or more interesting, or, maybe somebody was just, had a few too many drinks at the bar and, they like to make up stories. Maybe, I don't know. Who knows? I don't know. But it is, or is it just one of those cautionary tales that people tell to get people to be careful, kind of like that, the horror movies with the babysitters, where, the babysitter's fooling around with a boyfriend and then something happens. It's always the virgins that remain alive till the end of the movie, and the ones that are, upstairs fooling around with their boyfriends. They're the ones that die first. So it's like that underlying, you know, if you're the good girl, you're the one that lives till the end of the movie kind of parable. Was it something like that? Was it, a parable of, don't get in so much of a hurry that you're going to take an unsafe route and end up dying as a result, you and your entire crew. I don't know. If anybody has, if you've ever heard of any other stories about these particular ghost ships specifically that you've heard about, that, to add some more information to that, or just any other interesting ghost ship stories that you've heard. I also, in the course of looking for pictures for different things, I did come across one picture of a guy, and this was a more recent picture. It wasn't something from the 1700s, where a guy actually died in his yacht. And it was a really long time before they found him. And they actually have a picture of him in his boat. Basically, he wasn't completely frozen to death, but it kind of shows how, just to what extent he was able to remain preserved for a long period of time. So I only have one picture like that. So for anybody that's a little squeamish on that kind of stuff, and it's fortunately it's not completely graphic, but just so you know, I do have that in there. Alrighty. So again, thank you for coming and listening to me again. As always, I appreciate it. I hope everybody has a good weekend, and if you could hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, it would sure help me out a lot, as usual. And again, leave me some comments down in the comment section. If there's some things that you'd be interested in hearing me talk about on my channel, just let me know down in the comments, and give me an idea if there's other things you'd like to hear me talk about also. That'd be fantastic. All right, so y'all have a great weekend, and thanks for watching. Bye.
Oh, 1 mile in fog patches and showers early Friday, but improving to greater than 6 miles on Friday morning.
Stars shine.